The snow came down in sheets, erasing the horizon and turning the twisting Montana road into a white tunnel. Jack Turner leaned forward, both hands tight on the steering wheel of his old pickup. The wipers struggled against the storm, their squeaks drowned by the howl of wind curling off the mountains. His daughter Emma sat in the back seat, bundled in a parka, humming quietly to a tune only she seemed to know. Beside him in the front passenger seat, Rexy suddenly stiffened. The German shepherd's ears shot up, hackles bristling along his spine. A low growl rolled out of his chest, deeper than the sound of the engine. Jack trusted that warning more than any weather forecast. He eased his foot off the gas, peering through the windshield. Then he saw it. Up ahead, a police cruiser lay at a crooked angle, half buried in the snowbank, as if the storm itself had tried to swallow it whole. The driver's side door hung open, rocking gently in the wind, and against the rear wheel, illuminated by Jack's headlights, a figure slumped. A young woman, uniform soaked with blood, lips trembling as she whispered something Jack couldn't hear. "Dad." Emma's small voice cut through the roar of the storm. "Why's there a police car there?" Jack's throat tightened. "Stay put, sweetheart." Rexy gave a sharp bark that cracked through the night like a gunshot. It wasn't just an alarm. It was a command, a demand for Jack to act. He pulled the truck onto the shoulder, heart pounding with the same rhythm that had carried him through firefights years ago. He pushed open the door, the wind slamming against him like a wall of knives. Rexy leapt out before him, paws hitting the snow with the sure-footedness of a seasoned soldier. The shepherd sprinted to the cruiser, nose working, body low, already assessing threats the way he had on distant battlefields. Jack followed, boots crunching through drifts until he reached the woman. Up close, her pale face looked even younger than he first thought, late 20s maybe. Her badge glinted faintly beneath the snowflakes clinging to her jacket. She tried to speak, but only a raspy gasp came out. Jack pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse thready, fragile, but there. Rexy circled them, growl constant now, aimed toward the dark curve of the road behind them. Jack bent closer to the woman. "Hey, officer, stay with me." "What's your name?" Her lips barely moved. "Claire. Donovan." She coughed, blood flecking her chin. With surprising strength, she shoved a small USB drive into his gloved hand. Her eyes burned with desperation. "Don't. Call it in," she whispered. "They'll kill us both." For a split second, Jack froze. The words cut colder than the wind. Behind him, Emma had cracked her window, her wide eyes watching. "Dad, is she gonna die?" Jack shoved the panic down. "Not tonight," he muttered. He scooped Claire into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, the dead weight of someone fading too fast. As he carried her back to the truck, Rexy's bark exploded again, sharper this time. Jack whipped his head toward the sound. Through the veil of snow, faint headlights bobbed in the distance. More vehicles. Too deliberate, too close to be a coincidence. Jack's gut twisted. Whoever put her in that ditch wasn't finished. He yanked the truck's door open, laying Claire across the seat. Emma scrambled forward, clutching her stuffed rabbit with one hand and reaching to touch Claire's bloodied sleeve with the other. "She needs help," Emma whispered. "I know," Jack said, "and we're it." Rexy leapt back inside, body pressed against Emma as if to shield her from more than just the cold. The shepherd's eyes never left the road behind them, every muscle coiled. Jack threw the truck into gear. The tires spun before biting into the icy pavement, the whole vehicle fishtailing as he wrestled it back under control. The headlights behind them grew brighter, closing in. "Daddy," Emma's voice cracked. "Are they bad people?" Jack's jaw clenched. "We're about to find out." Claire's eyes fluttered open just long enough for her to whisper, "Trust. The dog." Rexy growled again, a sound Jack hadn't heard since Afghanistan. back when the shepherd worked mine sweeps and saved lives with instincts no machine could match. Tonight, in the middle of a Montana blizzard, that same bark carried a message. Danger was already here, and the secret Claire Donovan carried could burn an entire police force to the ground. And for Jack Turner, there was no turning back. Jack Turner had built his life around silence. Not the kind that rang hollow, but the purposeful quiet of someone who had seen too much noise, too much chaos, and chosen to step away. After Maria's funeral 5 years earlier, he packed what was left of his heart and a toddler who still cried for a mother she would never remember, and he disappeared into the Montana backcountry. The cabin he bought with her life insurance sat 30 miles from the nearest grocery store and 3 miles off the county road. Most delivery drivers refused to take the turn, especially in winter, which suited Jack just fine. He raised Emma on the rhythms of the land. Morning fires, lessons at the kitchen table, afternoons tracking deer prints in snow or learning to name stars when the clouds cleared. Emma had grown into her 7th year with a mixture of steel and sweetness that reminded Jack painfully of Maria. She had her mother's smile, quick and bright, and his habit of staring a little too long at the horizon, as if expecting trouble. At night she would press against him with questions that burned holes in his chest. Why can't Mommy just visit from heaven? Why do the other kids at town say I'm strange? He never lied to her, but the truth never seemed enough either. Rexy entered their lives when Emma was 4. A retired K9, battle-tested in Afghanistan, the shepherd had been delivered to Jack by an old teammate who knew what both man and dog needed. The first day, Rexy didn't play. He simply walked the perimeter of the property, nose low, tail rigid, cataloguing every scent and sound. That night he planted himself in Emma's doorway and refused to budge. From then on, she had a guardian who never slept more deeply than he should. Jack watched the bond form with something like envy. When Emma tumbled from a tree, Rexy was there before Jack, nudging her upright with a worried whine. When strangers approached the cabin deliverymen, hunters, even the occasional lost hiker, Rexy placed himself between Emma and the unknown, body coiled, waiting for Jack's command. His instincts were pure muscle memory, sharpened by years of combat but softened now by purpose. For Emma, Rexy wasn't just a dog. He was family, protector, and silent confidant. Life in the cabin was demanding but predictable. Jack worked remotely, writing manuals for outdoor equipment, words flowing in the quiet hours when Emma practiced reading aloud and Rexy dozed near the fire. The woods provided everything else. They grew vegetables in a small garden, hunted elk when meat was scarce, and filled long evenings with stories about Maria. The pain had dulled to an ache that came back strongest on birthdays and anniversaries, but Jack believed he had carved out something close to peace. Yet peace never lasts for men who carry ghosts. It was a Tuesday in late November when the first sign arrived. Jack was splitting firewood when Rexy stiffened on the porch, nose lifting into the icy air. His growl came low, a sound that still made Jack's neck prickle. Jack followed his gaze down the snowy track that led to the highway. A black SUV slowed at the fork, paused as if considering, then rolled on. The windows were tinted, too dark for county vehicles, too clean for hunters. Jack stored the image away. Montana roads didn't see much traffic in storms, and those who drove them usually had a reason. That night, Emma asked about the SUV. She had been watching from her bedroom window. "Why would anyone come out here, Daddy?" she whispered. Jack ruffled her hair and forced a smile. Probably lost, but Rexy hadn't relaxed until the engine noise faded. 2 days later, Jack found footprints near the property line. They weren't his, and they weren't Emma's. Heavy boots, one tread dragging slightly as if the wearer carried more weight than balance. He checked the perimeter, scanning the tree line with his rifle. Nothing. The storm had erased most of the trail. Inside, Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, showing Rexy a picture she had drawn of him standing guard in front of their cabin. The shepherd watched intently, tail thumping once against the floorboards. Jack's chest tightened at the sight. They were safe in that moment, but the world outside was circling closer. At night, he couldn't shake Maria's voice from the hospital bed, weak but firm. Raise her brave. Raise her to know right from wrong, even when it hurts. He had honored that by teaching Emma survival skills, by letting her learn to handle a knife responsibly, to build a fire in snow, to trust her instincts. But the SUV and the footprints gnawed at him. Peace had cracks. One evening, as Emma brushed her teeth and Rexy lay at the bedroom threshold, Jack sat at the kitchen table staring at his old service medals shoved in a drawer. He had run from the world, built walls of snow and pine trees, but trouble had a way of finding men like him. He didn't know yet that within a week he would be kneeling beside a dying officer in the snow, clutching a drive full of secrets that could tear apart an entire police force. He didn't know yet that Rexy's bark would become the line between life and death. But part of him, the part that still woke at every storm, already sensed the storm building. Rexy lifted his head suddenly, ears twitching toward the wind outside. The dog stared into the darkness as if he saw something Jack couldn't. His body went tense, tail stiff. "Easy, boy," Jack murmured, though his own pulse picked up. Rexy didn't move. He just watched, a sentinel in fur, breathing in the night and waiting for the first move of whatever shadow was out there. The storm had not yet come, but its edge had reached their doorstep. Claire Donovan had always believed in uniforms. As a little girl in Billings, Montana, she'd stand outside her father's hardware store and watch officers walk the sidewalks. She believed they were guardians, the way her father had been a quiet guardian of his neighbors. He never turned away a struggling family, even when credit went unpaid for months. Her mother taught 3rd grade, staying late to tutor kids who didn't have anyone else rooting for them. Service, sacrifice, community. It was stitched into Claire's bones. When she joined the Billings Police Department at 25, she thought she was stepping into that same lineage of protection. The academy had been brutal, but she thrived. She was tough enough to silence the whispers about being a woman in uniform, smart enough to top the class in criminal law, and stubborn enough to win the respect of peers who expected her to quit. For the first year, she walked her beat with pride, believing she had earned a place among the guardians she admired as a child. The cracks came quietly. A missing evidence bag after a drug bust. An officer she trusted shrugging when she raised the issue. At first, she thought it was a mistake, a clerical slip. But then it happened again. And again. Cash disappeared. Firearms logged in never made it to storage. Reports were altered before reaching court. She raised questions, but the answers were always the same. Misplaced evidence happens. Don't overthink it. You're new here, Donovan. Learn how things work. Claire didn't stop asking, and that was when the assignments changed. She was moved from her daytime patrol to nights in the city's roughest neighborhoods, alone. Calls that should have had backup suddenly went unanswered. She understood the message: keep quiet, or be left vulnerable. But Claire was her father's daughter. Stubbornness ran through her blood. If the system was rotten, she would prove it. She bought a small camera disguised as a pen. She kept a recorder sewn into the lining of her jacket. After hours, when the station was empty, she photographed documents, copied files, filled a USB drive with months of evidence. She learned who took money, who skimmed drugs, who answered to the man at the top. Deputy Chief Richard Hale, a man known in public as a reformer, a man Claire once admired for his speeches about accountability. Each discovery felt like swallowing broken glass. These were people she'd trained with, eaten with, celebrated birthdays with. Some had kids she babysat. Now she watched them line their pockets with poison, sold back into the streets. The danger became undeniable the night she intercepted a call that was supposed to be buried. A shipment of heroin hidden in a confiscated vehicle was to be lost in transfer. She logged it, kept the evidence secure, and went home. The next morning, she found her tires slashed and a dead crow nailed to her front porch. The message was clear. Still, she pushed forward. She made contact with an FBI agent in Denver, arranging to deliver the USB drive. The meet was set for Friday. Claire barely slept in the days leading up to it, running through every scenario. She checked her locks 3 times a night. She drove different routes to and from work, watching mirrors, memorizing headlights. On Thursday evening, as the storm built over the mountains, she left town in her cruiser. Snow stung her windshield, wipers struggling. She didn't see the vehicle come up behind her until the headlights filled the mirror. A deliberate hit sent her spinning across the ice, metal screaming as the cruiser slammed into a snowbank. She fought her way free, dazed, ribs screaming with pain. A shadow came through the storm. Not a stranger, someone she recognized. One of her own. He didn't fire a gun. Instead, he drove a knife between her ribs, angled to make the wound survivable but crippling. Enough to bleed her out in the cold, to let the storm finish the job. He said nothing, just looked at her, with something like regret, before walking back into the blizzard. Claire collapsed against the cruiser's wheel, blood soaking her uniform. The USB drive clenched in her fist. Every breath was fire, every heartbeat another drop lost to the snow. She prayed not for herself, but for the truth to survive. For someone to find her before the storm or the corruption swallowed everything. It should have ended there. But then Rexy's bark split the night, fierce and certain. It wasn't a random sound. It was the call of a soldier dog who sensed what men might overlook. Moments later, Jack Turner's headlights pierced the storm, and fate shifted course. Claire opened her eyes to see a man moving towards her, steady and deliberate, with the kind of caution only someone who had lived through ambushes carried in his muscles. A child's face appeared in the truck behind him, and the shepherd alert, growling, alive with protective fury, stood over her like a sentinel risen from the snow itself. For the first time since she realized the department she loved was corrupted, Claire felt the fragile edge of hope. She hadn't been left to die after all. The cabin glowed faintly against the storm, its chimney pumping smoke into the night sky. Jack pushed the door open with his shoulder, carrying Claire's limp body in his arms. Emma darted from the hallway in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her eyes widened at the sight of blood trailing onto the wooden floor. "Daddy!" Her voice shook. "She's hurt," Jack said quickly, keeping his tone steady for Emma's sake. "We're going to help her." Rexy was already inside, circling the room, sniffing at windows, ears twitching at every sound outside. He positioned himself between Emma and the front door, as if already calculating angles of attack. Jack trusted that instinct more than any lock. He laid Claire on the couch near the fireplace. Her uniform was sticky with blood, her face pale beneath the sweat beading on her skin. Jack ripped open the first aid kit, hands moving with the calm precision of training he never wanted to need again. He cleaned the wound, pressed gauze, and stitched what he could. Emma fetched towels and boiled water without needing to be told. She had practiced this in their make-believe drills, but tonight was no game. Claire stirred, her eyes fluttering open, fever glassy. She grabbed Jack's wrist with surprising strength and pressed the USB drive into his palm. "You can't call it in," she rasped. "They'll track it. They'll come here. They'll kill you, your little girl, all of us." Jack frowned. "You're delirious. You need a hospital." Her fingers tightened. "Listen to me. 12 officers, maybe more. Deputy Chief Hale runs it. They've been selling drugs, weapons, burying cases. I recorded everything. It's all on that drive." She coughed, blood flecking her lips. "If you call for help, the wrong people will answer." Emma's eyes flicked between them, confusion and fear battling on her small face. "Daddy," she whispered. Jack knelt beside Claire, feeling the weight of her words press into his chest. He had wanted nothing more than to disappear from the world, to raise his daughter in peace. But here it was, the storm breaking through his walls, demanding a choice. He stood and paced, the USB drive hot in his hand. He could throw it into the fire and end this nightmare before it dragged them under. Or he could believe her, step back into a war he hadn't asked for. Rexy padded over, planting himself at Jack's feet, gaze steady, unblinking. The dog gave a single sharp bark. It was the same bark he'd given once in Afghanistan, seconds before they uncovered a buried IED. Jack remembered that moment with clarity. The bark had saved an entire squad. Tonight it carried the same weight. Claire's voice broke through his thoughts. "Hale has eyes everywhere. If I disappear, they'll say I ran. If I die, it's just another accident. But that drive—" She swallowed hard. "It's the only way to burn it down." The cabin creaked in the wind, but Jack swore he heard something else. An engine, distant, swallowed by snow. Rexy's head shot up, ears swiveling, growl rising deep from his chest. Jack's blood ran cold. They had been followed. He turned to Emma, crouching to meet her eyes. "Sweetheart, listen to me. You stay close to Rexy. Do exactly as he tells you, okay?" Emma nodded, clutching her rabbit tighter. Claire tried to push herself upright. "Go. Take your daughter and run. Leave me," Jack shook his head. "Not happening." For years he had told himself he was done with other people's battles, that Emma was his only mission now. But Maria's voice lived in him still, from that hospital bed when she made him promise to raise their daughter brave, to do what was right even when it hurt. He looked at Rexy, at the shepherd standing guard like a sentinel carved from stone. The dog's eyes glowed in the firelight, fierce and unyielding. Jack slid the USB into his pocket and made his decision. There was no road back to peace now. The storm outside wasn't just weather, it was war coming for his doorstep. And for the first time in years, Jack Turner stepped forward to meet it. The storm had grown teeth. Wind clawed at the cabin walls, rattling the windows as if the night itself wanted in. Jack was stoking the fire when Rexy froze on the rug, head snapping towards the front of the house. His ears pinned back, a growl rumbling from deep in his chest. Jack trusted that sound more than any alarm system. He crossed the room in 3 strides and killed the lantern. Darkness swallowed the cabin, broken only by the red flicker of the dying fire. Outside, the crunch of tires on snow carried through the gale. Not plows, not neighbors. A low, predatory hum. Through the curtain, Jack caught the glint of headlights crawling up the narrow track to his property. A black SUV. Its engine idled low, steady, deliberate. The storm made travel nearly impossible, which meant whoever was out there had come for a reason and not a good one. Emma stirred on the couch, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, who's here?" "Quiet," Jack whispered, already grabbing his rifle and the go bag he never unpacked. His gut told him what Rexy already knew. Trouble had found them. Claire struggled to sit up, pale and sweating, her bandaged side darkening again with blood. "It's them," she said hoarsely. "They found us." Rexy padded to the door, muscles taut, the low growl never leaving his throat. He glanced back at Jack, eyes burning with urgency, then flicked his gaze towards the back door. It was as clear a command as words. "Move, now!" Jack scooped Claire into his arms, her weight heavier this time with fever and weakness. Emma clung to his side, trying not to cry. Jack bent low, his voice steady against the chaos building outside. "Sweetheart, remember our camping game? The one where we see who can be the quietest in the woods?" Emma nodded, eyes wide. "That's what we're playing." "Stay close to Rexy." The shepherd was already leading the way, pushing through the back door into the howling storm. Snow blasted against them in white sheets. Jack carried Claire, Emma's small hand gripping his jacket. The forest loomed ahead, black trunks swaying under the weight of ice. Behind them, car doors slammed. Voices cut through the wind, short and sharp. Professional. Too calm for hunters or lost travelers. Then the snap of a rifle bolt carried across the night. Rexy barked once, sharp and commanding, then darted into the trees. Jack followed, boots crunching through drifts, every step a battle against the storm. Emma stumbled, but Rexy was there, nudging her forward with his shoulder, guiding her path with an uncanny sense of direction. For half a mile, the blizzard worked in their favor, swallowing their tracks almost as soon as they were made. But then a new sound cut through the storm, the high-pitched whine of snowmobiles, engines revving, closing fast. Claire groaned in his arms, barely conscious. "They won't stop!" Jack's chest burned. He had seen men hunted before, in deserts half a world away, but never like this. Not with his daughter's hand in his, not with a dog he trusted more than most men at his side. The forest opened into a clearing. Rexy halted, body stiff, ears swiveling. He scanned the dark like a radar dish, then bounded left toward a cluster of boulders Jack recognized. A natural overhang shelter, if only for a moment. They slid under the rock face, the storm muffling to a dull roar. Jack set Claire down gently, her lips blue, her breath shallow. Emma huddled against her, tears freezing on her cheeks. Rexy stood at the entrance, tail rigid, eyes fixed on the tree line. His growl was steady now, not a threat, but a warning to whatever approached. One step closer and you pay. The snowmobiles cut their engines. Silence fell, broken only by the wind and the faint hum of radios. Then came the crunch of boots. Masked figures fanned through the trees, flashlights sweeping like predators' eyes. Jack counted at least 4, too organized to be anything but cops, or the kind of men cops sent when they didn't want questions. Emma clutched his sleeve, whispering, "Daddy, I'm scared." He squeezed her hand. "Me too, baby. But Rexy's with us. He'll keep us safe." The shepherd's eyes gleamed in the dark, locked on the approaching lights. His body quivered, not with fear but anticipation, every fiber waiting for the moment to strike. The lights drew closer. One beam swept dangerously near the rocks. Rexy's growl deepened into a sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. Jack shifted his rifle, his mind racing. He could stay, fight, and risk Emma watching her father bleed out in the snow. Or he could trust Rexy's instincts, trust the dog's uncanny ability to read the land, to lead them where no human would think to follow. Another bark split the night, sharp and urgent, not just alarm direction. Rexy bounded from the shelter, pausing only to glance back once. The message was clear. "Follow me." Jack hauled Claire onto his shoulders, grabbed Emma's hand, and stepped into the storm again. Behind them, the masked men closed in. Ahead of them, Rexy disappeared into the blizzard, a shadow with purpose, guiding them deeper into the night. The chase had begun, and there was no turning back. The blizzard pressed down like a living thing, erasing sound and sight until the world shrank to the few feet around them. Jack's breath came ragged, steam rising from his mouth as he trudged through the knee-deep snow, Claire's weight across his shoulders growing heavier by the minute. Emma clung to his side, her mittened hand gripping the strap of his jacket. Rexy ranged just ahead, weaving through drifts with the surety of a creature bred for survival. He paused every few yards, ears twitching, scanning for threats, then drove forward again. At last, the shepherd veered sharply right, pushing through a curtain of snow-laden branches. Jack followed and nearly stumbled into the entrance of a collapsed ranger shelter, half swallowed by the forest. Logs lay rotting, roof sagged, but stone walls still offered refuge against the wind. Inside, it was little more than a hollow, but it was cover. Jack eased Claire down onto a pile of old pine needles. She shivered uncontrollably, her face ashen, sweat and fever giving her eyes a glassy sheen. Emma knelt beside her, stroking her arm as if touch alone could anchor her to the living. Rexy planted himself at the entrance, hackles bristling, his silhouette black against the swirl of snow. "We'll be safe for a minute," Jack whispered, though he knew safety was temporary. He knelt beside Claire, checking her wound. The bleeding had slowed, but infection was already setting in. He could feel the heat radiating off her skin. Claire's voice was faint, but steady. "You should have left me." "Not an option," Jack said. She gave a small, pained laugh. "You don't know what you've stepped into." Her hand fumbled for his, pressing against his glove. "It's bigger than you think. The man behind it all—" "It's Hale." Jack frowned. "Hale?" "Deputy Chief Richard Hale." She breathed. "The department worships him. The public thinks he's a savior. He's been on magazine covers, shaking hands at charity events. But he's the one running everything. The drugs, the weapons, the money laundering. He controls it all." The name struck Jack like a slap. He remembered the headlines. Hale had been the face of reform in Montana law enforcement, the man credited with cleaning up Billings streets. He'd even once visited Emma's elementary school, giving speeches about courage and service. Claire's voice cracked as she went on. "He saved my life once. 2 years ago, during a raid, a suspect opened fire. Hale tackled me out of the way. I thought I owed him everything. I believed in him." Her eyes burned with fever and fury. And all the while he was building his empire in the shadows. Emma's brows furrowed. "But if he saved you, why would he hurt you now?" Claire turned her head towards the little girl, tears cutting through the grime on her face. "Because saving me cost him nothing. But exposing him costs him everything." Jack's stomach churned. Betrayal this deep cut, sharper than any knife. He knew the type leaders who wrapped themselves in honor while their hands dripped with filth. He'd seen it overseas, officers selling out civilians for profit, smiling for cameras while families buried their dead. And now here, in Montana, under the banner of law and order. A sound outside snapped him back. The faint whine of engines cut through the storm, closer this time. Snowmobiles again. The pursuit hadn't slowed. Rexy growled, low and deliberate, nose pressed to the wind. His body vibrated with warning. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle. His mind raced, Claire barely conscious, Emma trembling beside her, the shepherd ready but outnumbered. He was back in the calculus of survival he thought he'd left behind. How long to hold, when to move, what risks to take. "Jack," Claire whispered, her breath shallow. "If I don't make it, you have to take the drive to the feds. Don't let Hale bury it. Promise me." Jack met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "You'll make it. But if you don't, I'll finish what you started." Emma's voice cut in, small but fierce. "She will make it. Rexy won't let her die." The shepherd lifted his head at the sound of his name, eyes gleaming in the dim light. He stepped forward, pressing his weight gently against Claire's legs, as if to say she was under his watch now. His steady presence filled the cramped shelter with something Jack hadn't felt in hours. Hope. Outside, flashlights pierced the storm, beams slicing through the trees. Voices barked orders, muffled by the wind but disciplined, controlled. The hunters were closing in. Jack chambered around, the metallic click loud in the small space. He felt Maria's words echo through his bones. Raise her brave. Do what's right, even when it hurts. Betrayal had a name now, Richard Hale, and Jack knew there was no retreat left. The enemy wasn't faceless anymore. It was someone who wore a badge, someone the town trusted. That made him twice as dangerous. Rexy snarled, pressing against the doorframe, tail rigid, every muscle coiled. He was ready. So was Jack. The storm had brought them to this place, but betrayal would drive what happened next. Snow drifted in through cracks in the old ranger shelter, dusting Claire's fevered skin, clinging to Emma's hair. Jack crouched near the entrance with Rexy pressed against his leg. The shepherd's hackles stood like bristles, ears sharp forward. Outside, the storm had softened just enough to carry the crunch of boots in the snow. Voices barked low commands. They were surrounded. Jack raised his rifle, steadying his breath. He counted at least 5 sets of lights moving through the trees. These weren't scared kids playing outlaw. Their pattern was disciplined flankers circling wide, 2 closing head-on. They moved like men who knew combat. Rexy stiffened, growl deepening. Then came a voice Jack hadn't heard in years. Jack Turner. The name cut through the storm like a blade. Jack's stomach clenched. Come on out. No one wants to hurt the girl. Just give us the cop. Give us what she gave you, and you can all walk away. Jack knew that voice, knew the cadence, the gravel that came from too many years breathing desert dust. He stepped closer to the gap in the wall and saw him broad shoulders under tactical gear, ski mask pulled high enough to expose his face. Tom Reeves. For a moment, memory blindsided him. Baghdad heat. A convoy ambushed, Jack and Tom hauling a bleeding sergeant into cover, shouting, "I got you, brother," over the gunfire. Nights where they'd shared MRES, talked about the lives they'd build after. Tom had been closer than blood once. Now he stood with his rifle lowered, eyes unreadable. "Tom," Jack said, disbelief and anger tangling in his throat. "What the hell are you doing here?" Reeves's mouth tightened. "Doing what I have to." "Same as you." Behind him, flashlights jerked as the other men moved into position. One raised his weapon too soon. Rexy launched forward in a blur of muscle and fury, teeth snapping. The man cried out, spinning as the shepherd's jaws clamped on his arm. The group broke formation, shouts overlapping. Gunfire cracked, echoing through the trees. "Rexy back!" Jack barked. But the dog didn't retreat until the man dropped his weapon, scrambling away in shock. Only then did Rexy circle back, growl rumbling, snow flecked red around his muzzle. His eyes locked on Jack, waiting for the next order. Jack's rifle tracked Tom. "Brother, don't make me do this!" Tom's voice stayed flat, but his eyes flickered. "You don't get it. Hale owns everything now. You think you can fight this? You've got a kid in there, Jack. You've already lost too much. Don't throw the rest away, funny." Jack snapped. "I remember you saying something different in Iraq. About not leaving families to the wolves. About standing up even if it costs you." Tom's jaw clenched. For a moment, something human cracked through the soldier's mask. Then he raised his rifle, slow, deliberate. Jack's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the fracture between what was and what used to be. 2 men who'd once pulled each other out of fire, now locked on opposite sides. Inside, Emma cried out, her small voice cutting through the storm. Claire tried to push herself upright, but she collapsed back against the wall, too weak to move. Rexy barked once, loud and commanding, breaking the standoff like a gunshot. Snow whipped around them, flashlights darted, voices cursed. Jack dropped into cover as bullets sparked off stone. Rexy lunged again, driving one of the masked men to the ground, his teeth tearing cloth, forcing chaos into the tight ring around the shelter. When Jack came up, rifle steady, Tom was there, face hard, eyes pained. "This isn't your war anymore," he shouted over the storm. Jack's voice was raw. It is now. Their rifles leveled on each other, two soldiers who once swore never to leave the other behind. The storm raged around them, but the true collision wasn't wind or snow. It was brother against brother, loyalty against betrayal, honor against survival. And in the center of it, Rexy stood braced between them, growl like thunder, ready to decide which man would walk away. Gunfire cracked through the trees, muted by the storm, but close enough to rattle the old ranger shelter. Jack pressed Emma behind him, heart pounding. Claire slumped against the wall, pale and drenched in fever sweat, whispering through clenched teeth, "Don't let them take it!" Rexy snarled from the doorway, body low, hackles like bristles, his eyes tracking every flicker of light outside. He knew the shape of danger, knew the intent behind the beams of flashlights creeping through the snow. The first man pushed too close. Rexy exploded forward with a bark that ripped through the storm, jaws snapping inches from the intruder's arm. The man cursed, stumbling back into his partners. Chaos flared. Shouts, orders, boots shifting in panic. In that confusion, Rexy froze, nose lifted, drawing in the wind. His ears shot forward, tail stiffening. Then he lunged not at a man, but at the black backpack one of them carried. He slammed his weight into it, teeth tearing through nylon, dragging it into the snow. "What the hell? Get him off!" the officer shouted, shoving at the shepherd. But Rexy had already ripped the pack open. White powder spilled across the snow, stark against the black night. A sickly chemical stench filled the air. For one heartbeat, everything went silent. Then one of the masked men swore, voice cracking. "What the hell is this, Davis? We weren't supposed to be carrying product on this run." "It's not mine!" The man shouted back, eyes wide. "I swear, they planted it on me." "They planted? Bullshit!" Another snapped. "You said this was just cleanup. Just get the cop and go. You didn't say anything about running drugs while we're risking our asses." Jack watched from the shadows, the fracture widening like a crack in ice. Rexy barked again, sharp and furious, planting a paw on the spilled powder, as if presenting the evidence himself. His tail lashed once, and his eyes blazed with certainty. Here was the truth, undeniable. The group splintered. Two lowered their rifles, muttering curses at the man with the pack. One backed up a step, shaking his head. "I didn't sign on for this." Hale said it was protection work, not trafficking. "This is on you." Tom Reeves stood at the edge of the group, his rifle wavering. He looked from Jack to the pack, to Rexy's unrelenting stance, and something shifted in his face. The soldier Jack remembered flickered through the man Hale had bought. Jack seized the moment. He surged from the doorway, rifle raised, voice carrying through the storm. "You see it now, don't you? Hale doesn't care about you. He's using you the same way he uses every badge he owns. You're disposable. You'll take the fall while he walks away clean." One of the men hesitated, gun lowering. "He promised." "Promised what?" Jack barked back. "That your family would be safe. That your debts would vanish. Look at the bag. Look at what you're standing in. You're the ones with snow on your hands. When this blows open, Hale won't be the one rotting in prison, you will." Rexy barked again, sharp and commanding, cutting through the night like judgment itself. The men flinched. Even Emma, pressed against Claire, whispered, "He's telling the truth, Daddy." Tom's rifle dropped first. His voice was low, cracked with something like shame. "He's right. Hale never dirtied his own hands. We've been his cover." The others faltered. Weapons wavered. The circle around the shelter loosened. Jack moved fast. He pulled Emma to her feet, slung Claire's arm over his shoulder, and pushed them towards the tree line. "Rexy, guard!" The shepherd leapt to his side, body taut, head snapping between threats, a growl bubbling steady in his chest. He herded Emma forward with a nudge of his flank, guiding her steps through the snow while keeping his teeth bared, toward the men behind them. A shot cracked, wild from one of the panicked officers who hadn't lowered his weapon. The bullet slammed into a tree trunk inches from Jack's head. Before the man could fire again, Rexy lunged with a roar, slamming him into the snow, jaws locked on his sleeve, dragging him down until his weapon skittered across the ice. The others shouted, but none dared move. They had seen enough Rexy's bark, the spilled truth, the fracture of loyalty. Jack didn't wait. He drove Claire and Emma into the storm, Rexy bounding ahead to carve a path. Behind them, voices clashed, accusations, curses, fear unraveling the tight formation. The hunters had become a pack turning on itself. As the forest swallowed them, Jack's chest heaved with cold air and adrenaline. He glanced at Rexy, running strong, snow crusting his muzzle, his eyes blazing with a soldier's clarity. It wasn't just instinct. The shepherd had dragged the truth into the light when men tried to bury it. In the chaos of betrayal and snow, it was Rexy's bark that had shaken their enemy's foundation. And now, with Claire bleeding and Emma trembling, it was that same bark that carved them a sliver of hope. The storm had slowed, but the night was far from silent. The trees groaned under heavy snow, wind whispered through the branches, and the crunch of boots signaled a danger that hadn't passed. Jack guided Emma and Claire into the clearing of an abandoned ranger station, the structure sagging but defensible. He pushed the door open, easing Claire inside while Rexy swept the shadows with his nose and ears, a sentinel that never wavered. Emma clung to Jack's sleeve, whispering, "Daddy, is it over?" Jack glanced at Claire, pale and trembling, her wound still bleeding despite all his work. Her eyes burned with stubborn fire. "Not yet," he murmured. "Not until we end this." Before he could say more, headlights cut through the trees, slicing across the snow. A dark SUV barreled into the clearing. Jack froze, pressing Emma behind him. The door swung open, and Deputy Chief Richard Hale stepped out. He didn't bother with a mask. His expression was calm, cold, like a man walking into a meeting he'd already won. His tactical vest gleamed under the headlights, and a pistol rested casually in his hand. Behind him, 2 officers fanned out, rifles raised. "Well," Hale drawled, voice steady as the storm itself. "Officer Donovan. I figured you'd bleed out before causing me more trouble. Guess I underestimated your stubborn streak." His eyes shifted to Jack. "And you, Turner. You should have stayed in your cabin with your daughter. This was never your fight." Jack felt Emma's hand tighten around his wrist, tiny and trembling. He lifted his rifle slightly, but he knew the numbers weren't in his favor. Then Claire moved. Despite her fever, despite the wound that left her swaying, she raised the pistol Jack had tucked into her waistband. Her voice cracked, but it carried weight. "Richard Hale, drop it." Hale laughed, shaking his head. "You don't even have the strength to hold that thing steady." "You think you're going to bring me down, after everything I've built?" His men shifted, uncertain, and in that moment Rexy surged forward. The shepherd's snarl ripped the night as he launched straight at Hale. The deputy chief fired once, the bullet whistling past in the storm. Rexy hit him square, teeth sinking into the padded vest, ripping through fabric, clawing until something tumbled out, a bundle of sealed envelopes and ledgers hidden beneath his armor. They scattered across the snow. Pages flipped in the wind, exposing names, dates, cash transfers. Proof, undeniable and damning. One of Hale's men cursed, stepping back. "Boss, what the hell is this?" Hale staggered, shouting, "Pick it up! Destroy it now!" But Claire's voice rang sharp. "Don't move!" She steadied herself against the wall of the ranger station, gun raised. Her pale face glistened with sweat, but her eyes burned like steel. "This ends tonight, Hale. No more kids dying because of you. No more families broken." For a breathless moment, no one moved. Rexy kept his teeth locked on Hale's vest, growl vibrating through the clearing. Snow whipped through the air, carrying the scent of gunpowder and fear. Then sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flickered faintly through the storm, growing closer. The FBI Hale's composure cracked. He thrashed against Rexy, fury twisting his face. "You think this changes anything? You think the Bureau can touch the people I answer to?" Jack stepped forward, rifle steady. "Maybe not all of them. But you're done. Tonight, you face what you built." One of Hale's men dropped his rifle, shaking his head. "I'm not dying for this." He bolted into the trees, swallowed by the storm. Another hesitated, then followed. Their loyalty had cracked with the papers blowing across the snow. The SUV door slammed shut as Hale tried to twist free. But Claire stumbled closer, her voice sharp with every ounce of strength left. "Deputy Chief Richard Hale, you're under arrest." Hale spat into the snow. "You'll never live long enough to testify." Rexy growled deeper, tightening his bite just enough to make Hale wince, blood soaking through where teeth met skin. The shepherd's eyes burned with a soldier's certainty. The first FBI vehicle screeched into the clearing, tires skidding, doors flying open. Agents poured out, weapons raised, lights sweeping across the scene. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Jack didn't move. He didn't have to. Rexy still pinned Hale, snow-stained red, evidence scattered like ash at his feet. Claire swayed but stood tall, pistol never dropping. Emma peeked from behind Jack's arm, wide-eyed, watching the world tilt. In the storm's roar, justice had found its opening. The night wasn't quiet. It wasn't safe. But it was the beginning. And with Rexy's bark still echoing through the clearing, it felt like the tide had shifted at last. Winter gave way slowly in Montana. The storms broke piece by piece, rivers of meltwater carving through snowdrifts, and the mountains finally exhaled their long-held frost. By the time the courtroom doors swung open in Billings, the season of reckoning had arrived. Jack sat in the gallery, Emma curled against his side, her small fingers wrapped around Rexy's collar. The German shepherd sat tall, ears alert, eyes trained on the front of the room, as though he understood that this was battle of a different kind. Claire sat 2 rows ahead, her arm bound in a sling, but her face fierce, steady. The judge read names one by one. Deputy Chief Richard Hale, 14 officers, 2 city officials. Sentences rolled out like thunder, 25 years, 15, 30, without parole. The gavel cracked, a sound that seemed to close a chapter of rot. Hale didn't look at Claire, didn't look at anyone. But when Rexy growled low, deep in his chest, the deputy chief flinched, just slightly. Justice had teeth, and he knew it. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed, questions rained. Jack kept Emma close, shielding her face from the frenzy. "Mr. Turner, do you have anything to say about the verdict?" He shook his head. "This isn't our story to sell." Claire stepped into the light instead. Her voice carried without hesitation. "Corruption thrives when good people stay silent. Today is just one victory. Tomorrow there will be others. And we'll be ready." The FBI had already extended her a new assignment special consultant, traveling wherever crooked systems needed exposing. Her badge would carry her across state lines, but her fight had grown larger than Montana. Jack, meanwhile, was handed something else. In a quiet chamber away from the cameras, a social worker placed a folder on the table. "Mr. Turner, after review, the court is granting you full guardianship of Emma Turner." Permanently, Jack blinked, throat tightening. "I've always been her father." The woman smiled gently. "Now it's in writing." Emma beamed, hugging him so tight his ribs ached. "See, Daddy? They can't take me away. It's us forever." Rexy nosed her shoulder, tail thumping once in approval. He had chosen this pack long ago. Now the world had caught up. That night, they moved into a modest home near the foothills, still isolated, but with sturdier walls than the old cabin. Boxes were scattered, the air faintly smelling of fresh paint, but the hearth glowed warm. Emma drifted to sleep in her new room, stuffed rabbit tucked beneath her chin, Rexy sprawled across the doorway like a living shield. His ears flicked at every creak, every whisper of wind. His eyes gleamed faint gold in the dark, unblinking. Jack stood in the hall, watching the quiet. His chest loosened for the first time in years. He bent close to Rexy, whispering, "We made it." The shepherd blinked once, slow and deliberate, before settling his head back on his paws. Duty didn't end, but peace had been earned, at least for tonight. Claire visited 2 days later, a manila folder under her good arm. "They want me in Denver by Monday. First stop in a string of dirty departments." Jack poured her coffee, leaning on the counter. "You ready for that?" She nodded, gaze drifting toward Emma's laughter in the next room. "After what we saw here, I don't have a choice." "But I'll be back. Montana has a way of calling you home." Rexy padded over, nudging her leg with his nose, as if approving the vow. For a long moment, the three of them stood together, the soldier, the cop, and the shepherd who had forced the truth into daylight. Outside, the mountains loomed, battered but unbroken. Inside, hope felt possible again. Because what remained after blood and betrayal was not just survival. It was family. It was loyalty. It was the bark of a German shepherd in the dark, saying without words, "You are not alone." What's your story with a loyal pet? If this story moved you, help us keep sharing the incredible bond of German shepherds and the humans who stand with them. Subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, and let others know that courage often begins with 4 paws and a bark in the night.